The Chowder and Grits, the podcast for Virginia Tech sports. I'm Justin Cochiola alongside Tim Hirth. It is Thursday, October 27th. We're talking Virginia Tech, NC State. We've got James Henderson from Inside Pack Sports on to help us preview NC State, give you an inside look about everything the Wolfpack have going on and what the odds are Virginia Tech could possibly pull the upset. But before all that, Tim, what's going on?
You know, I got an NBA game on the television right now. I actually, which is not like me, purchased NBA TV this year, and I have not regretted it. I've been enjoying watching basketball, which leads me to obviously the next step logically, which is, hey, ACC basketball coming up. The Hokies are here to defend their title. I can't wait to get talking about that later. But first, obviously, we got to take a look at this week's football game, and I know we have some thoughts.
Yeah, so basketball season's right around the corner. I don't know when tip-off is exactly, but I know it's in November. And November is only a few days away. Yeah. I mean, you know, Hokies coming off a bye. They're 2-5, obviously. I think this, if they don't win Thursday, not to start off negative, but I'm just spitting facts here, I think it'll be their first winless October since 1952.
Go.
So, it's been a minute. You know, obviously, I think this would be 5 straight losses, which I don't think has been done in a couple of decades. So there's a couple of things on the line here. Unfortunately, they've got a pretty tough matchup against NC State. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. And just a reminder, we're out there on YouTube, Chowder and Grits. Type it in. You'll find these videos if you prefer to listen to your podcast that way. Apple Podcasts, Spotify seem to be the most popular audio routes. And chowderandgrits.com, Instagram, Twitter, Chowder and Grits. I think you got it by now. Let's jump into the James Henderson preview and, let's see what he has to say. We welcome on James Henderson from Inside Pack Sports. James, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, fellas, anytime. I appreciate it.
So NC State, 5-2, down their quarterback, Devin Leary. Can you give us 3 other reasons why Virginia Tech could possibly win this game?
It's a hell of a way to start.
You guys have probably watched.
Say why they would.
Yeah, you guys have probably watched football as long as me. I mean, anytime you're down your quarterback, that counts as 2, right?
Yep.
I mean, you know, I don't know how Virginia Tech feels about Grant Wells, but he's been playing. And so I think that's always, I know for NC State right now, you're just going into a game where it's like, hey, can we win one without Leary? And I know obviously Chambers played the second half against Florida State, but that wasn't a full game. And I think Virginia Tech's solid defensively to where it's a concern. So for me, it would be the quarterback position and you know, it's weird. I look at these 2 teams, and while NC State's 5-2 and ranked and all those things, I mean, I think offensively they're very close. They're very similar. Like neither are explosive, right? I mean, neither have great weapons. And I just think anytime you go into a game like that without weapons, I mean, you're kind of swimming upstream a little bit. And I think that's just a problem both are facing.
Well, something I wanted to touch on you about too was even when Devin was around, Tim Beck has frustrated me in the past watching NC State games. But then again, you look at what he did with Bailey Hockman when Leary went down a couple years ago. Tim Beck, not Bailey Hockman, was the one getting, squeezing what he could out of Bailey Hockman to get State to put up some respectable performances. I don't know if State lacks, you probably know better than I do, but to me, I'm not sure State lacks explosive players, but they certainly have trouble scheming them open. When Jack Chambers took over, it looked like they didn't trust him to do anything against Syracuse, and that frustrated me personally because I think Jack could have beaten Syracuse if allowed to throw the football just a little bit more.
I agree. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the game plan going into Virginia Tech? I mean, if you're NC State, you have to unleash Jack, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I don't think I think part of their issues this year was they came into the year with what they thought was the best defense in the ACC.
Right.
And I think they felt, right or wrong, like we can go out and if we get a lead on teams, it's pretty much over. And you look at their first 4 games when their numbers weren't great, even offensively, and you throw out UConn, you throw out Charleston Southern, they blew those teams out, no one cares. But, Texas Tech, East Carolina, like they were up 2 scores on those teams at halftime and just quit essentially offensively because they knew they could win the game.
Right.
And so I think that's been their game plan, and it kind of bit them against Clemson where, they had to come back. And again, you're playing on the road against Clemson. Clemson played well that night. No turnovers. I mean, you're not going to Clemson and winning if they don't give you the game, essentially. Let's be real here. And so I think that was the problem then. And then FSU, just slow start. And so I don't think they feel like they have to unleash Jack Chambers. And that's probably, like you're saying, that's the frustrating part for NC State fans because it's like no one wants to watch football like that anymore.
No.
Like if you're a fan, there's still an entertainment aspect to it where it's like, we beat Texas Tech 27-14, but it could have been worse if we tried, right?
Sure. I mean, and that was the frustrating thing for the Syracuse game is I thought State was right in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And time again, Tim Beck never came out of his shell from an offensive play calling perspective. And while he doesn't necessarily come out of his shell often lately, it seems, part of my frustration is it seems like with Beck all year, he hasn't allowed his receivers to even attempt to make plays, which a lot of folks have pointed to the loss of Emeka Emezi. But, that was a patented throw right there, back shoulder to Emeka Emezi. Emeka's a great wide receiver, but you're not even giving the wide receivers a chance with back shoulder balls right now. You're not giving them a chance one-on-one to make contested catches, and that's what I feel like is frustrating.
So is this going back to the Leary?
This is going back to Leary, but this is going back to Virginia Tech, ultimately. We have the same issues, and I find frustrations that are very similar in both of these offenses. The only difference is Beck is very experienced OC. Tyler Bowen is his first year. Something's got to give here. I mean, somebody has got to break out offensively in this game.
Yeah, I think explosiveness is a myth, if that makes sense. Like, look, you watch the NFL, you guys watch the NFL, right? You don't see guys running wide open. Let's be real here. I mean, guys are making contested catches all day Sundays.
Yep.
And so just because you don't think you have the profiles to have explosive weapons, give them opportunities. Emeka Emezi he ran 4.8, I think, at a combine or at pro day. Like, he's not fast, but he got opportunity. Like, throw it up. I tell the people on our boards, 4 things can happen on a vertical shot, right? A completion, incompletion, interception, penalty.
Sure.
And 3 of those things I think are okay for the offense.
And 2 of them are good.
And I know folks will say, well, one of them's an incompletion. I'm like, okay, I can run the ball into the back of my line for 2nd and 10 too, right? And we didn't throw it. And so take the shots. I think, I don't know what Virginia Tech's numbers are like in terms of vertical shots, but with NC State, they're winning the games throwing 2, 3, 4 vertical balls a game, and it's just like, well, how can you be explosive if you're not trying? And I don't know if Virginia Tech's got that same issue. Maybe they do.
Very much do. I think, I haven't watched a ton of NC State games this year, but it sounds like they're vertically challenged like Virginia Tech is, which is frustrating with Virginia Tech because you look at a guy like Grant Wells who had success throwing the ball down the field last year at Marshall. It was actually one of the better situations he found himself in statistically was his down the field throw. So it is questionable. Looking past Chambers a little bit, there's really only a 1-game sample size. He transferred in from Charleston Southern. So, I think he had 17 touchdowns and 10 picks last year. What is NC State going to try and do to Virginia Tech on Thursday night to try and establish some kind of offensive flow?
Yeah, I think they're going to try and run the football. They get back Demi Sumo, who, I think is their best tackle breaker in between the chains guy. Their problem at Syracuse was, I don't know how many total runs they have. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think they forced 4 missed tackles as a team. And that's just, you're getting what your offensive line is blocking when you're doing that. And that's including Chambers, right? That's including your quarterback, all runs. It was like 4. And I think that's where Sumo can help them at, is he's a guy who can break tackles, make plays in the run game. And I think they're going to run the ball and mix in some shots. One of the things you mentioned with Tim Beck, like if I'm him, I don't go into this game necessarily trying to completely revamp my offense, right? I don't come out the bye week doing that. I come out saying, I've got 8 to 10 shots I want to take in a game, right? Like I've got 8 to 10 these plays. I think I can find a mismatch I like. I can take a vertical for a touchdown. I'm in the red zone. I've got a play or two I want to go to where I can score on. And I think if you're NC State with where their defense is at, if you can hit 2 of those in a game, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
And
Right.
but the thing is, you got to call them. And the other problem, I will say this for Beck. When I go back and watch the games afterwards, and we're cutting it up for our features, he's called some plays vertically where they're not throwing them.
Yeah.
Like the quarterback has to throw it. It's got to be blocked up at the right time at the same time, right? It has to be there. I know against Syracuse, there were 2 verticals they called that Chambers just didn't throw. He ate it and ran for 4 or 5 yards. And those don't show up, right, in terms of the vertical opportunities. So it's not just the coordinator, like the quarterback has to be able to throw it. The line has to block for him, all those things.
Sure.
Defensively, I mean, NC State came into the season, a lot of hype. They've performed at a, good level. I don't think they've been as good as people maybe thought they would be this year. What does NC State do well, and where do you think their strengths are defensively right now?
Yeah, I think their thing is they're really good on all 3 levels. Like they have a guy on every level. Like defensive line, Corey Durden was first team All ACC last year. They've got 3 really good linebackers. I think all 3 have been All ACC at one point. Secondary, Tanner Ingle was first team All ACC at safety. They've got Aiden White, who I think at corner is their best player right now.
Absolutely.
Defensively, I mean, he's like might be leading the PFF at corners in terms of coverage in the league. I mean, he's been really good.
And so,
yeah, I mean, I think they've got multiple guys where they feel like they've got playmakers, and that gives them a chance. I mean, their offense hadn't helped them out a lot. And look, I'm often the biggest critic of NC State's defense. I'm with you. I mean, they go into a game like Syracuse where, Syracuse scored on the final possession to get 24 in that game, and I still feel like they didn't play well.
Yep.
Most games as a defense, you take your defense giving up 24 on the road against an undefeated team, right? And that's kind of like, I think the expectations are so high for them. But yeah, I mean, I think that's if they're going to do something over these final 5 games, I mean, I think that's the side they're going to lean to. And that's why I was telling Tim, like, I just don't necessarily think Beck's going to come out and try and be crazy explosive, because I really think they feel like Virginia Tech, they may think they can win that game 24-13.
Sure.
Right? 21-13. And so don't throw a pick 6. Don't give up a fumble return for a touchdown, trying to do stuff you may not have to do.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, looking at Virginia Tech and what we've done this year, I mean, that's a fair bet. And I think, going in with Jack Chambers, your confidence there obviously is hit or miss, understandably so. I mean, why risk it? I think potentially if we come out and you see the Hokies have some success on offense, because our expectations could not be lower right now for the offense. If you were to see that, I think we might, we'd see Tim Beck and Jack Chambers throwing the ball a little bit more. But it's just hard pressed to imagine a scenario in which they're going to come out gunning. Although, selfishly, I still want to see both teams sling it around. I kind of can see what game we're going to get right now, and it may not be the most exciting football game. Let's just say that.
No, and I know we had Justin on our podcast. I think he talked about a lot of the same things I said. I mean, Virginia Tech's been moving ball. Like NC State against Syracuse, they scored 9 points, had 4 red zone trips.
Right.
I mean, how's that happen, right? I mean, you go into the red zone 4 times, you come out with 9 points.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I mean, that was a game.
Sounds like the Tennessee Titans.
You could have won. You don't like your kicker being up for the Lou Groza game.
That's right.
Like, just let your listeners know this, right? I mean, it's great for him, but it's not good.
On that note, Will Ross, Virginia Tech's kicker, is actually wearing the 25 this week.
There you go.
Because he is one of the best players for the Hokies this year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this game could probably wrap up in under 2 hours, if we're being honest, because I think both teams are going to try and run the football. I don't know if necessarily Virginia Tech's going to be able to have success. But, what's your prediction right now? You've got NC State. They're a 13.5-point favorite. The over-under is 39.5, which is nasty.
Gracious.
That's nasty.
That's ugly.
So I'm hoping the game is a little bit more exciting than that. But kind of like what you were saying, like neither one of these teams is very good at creating explosive plays. So I feel like the key to winning for both is a sound game defensively and on special teams to not let the game get away from them from that standpoint, allowing a defensive touchdown, allowing a special teams touchdown. Where are you at right now with NC State?
Yeah, man. I mean, NC State went to Clemson and they were down, I think it was 13-10 at the half, I believe. Had 3 possessions in the first half.
Yeah.
And I mean, that felt like that first half was like, an hour long, right? I mean, it was just, and they scored on 2 of the 3 possessions, and you're sitting here at halftime thinking your offense wasn't good because you only have 10 points.
Right.
Yep.
But I mean, and that's the thing that's so weird about it sometimes is like they had an 8-minute drive and a 5-minute drive. And I think that's what you'll probably get against Virginia Tech. I think both of these offenses are going to try and ball control. I mean, if you scan the ACC stats for explosive plays, like I said, they're 12th, 13th, 14th. At whatever yardage you want to pick, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, doesn't matter. They're at the bottom. So that tells you there's either going to be a lot of 3 and outs or a lot of these drives where they're like 8 minutes and they might end up with the field goal inside the red zone, right?
Right.
So I'm kind of with you. I'm looking at something like, I mean, I think I picked maybe 24, like I told, 24-13, 27-16, like something right around that number. I mean, that's right on the Vegas total. Like, I don't think this is going to be a game where it's a blowout. And I mean, I would be shocked if Virginia Tech wins it, really. Like, I mean, because, I was telling Tim, I don't think State's going to come out and really push the tempo, really try and make this an up-tempo explosive game. And I think Virginia Tech, that's probably in their wheelhouse with what they've got offensively this year, right? I mean, that type of setup.
It feels like, and this is not meant to be disrespectful because Virginia Tech's 2-5 and NC State's 5-2, but it actually feels like a decent matchup for Virginia Tech because defensively right now, both teams are pretty solid. They can be vulnerable in certain areas. Virginia Tech's been a pretty solid defense this year outside of the explosive play, specifically in a few matchups. Offensively, there has been no explosive plays. So it's going to be interesting to see how they match up against NC State. I think on your podcast I said 31-20. I think I'm going to come down on that a little bit. I'll say 27-15. I think it's just going to be a weird score. I don't know why. Tim, what's your prediction for the game?
I mean, I'm right in line with you guys. I expect NC State to win. Right now it seems to me that Brent Pry came into this season with an idea of how he wanted to play football. He wanted 2 tight ends on the field, and he wanted to run it up the middle twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a drive.
Right.
The only issue is sometimes when you get younger head coaches in there, they don't realize that you really need to build your offense around the people you have in that locker room, not necessarily what your ideal for a good football team is. So until we stop acting like we're Iowa, not this year, Iowa's a dumpster fire. Give me Wisconsin, for the last decade. Until we stop pretending we're Wisconsin the last decade and that we can dominate on the offensive line, if we continue to run straight into the defense, that plays in NC State's hands. I mean, NC State's not only good, they're elite when you talk about their line and their linebackers. One of the best combined units, front 7 in the game, I think right now in all of college football. If you went, player by player, there's just as much talent there as there is anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's the problem. NC State at home this year, I mean, they're giving up 13 to Texas Tech, who, I mean, they're putting up 35-40 on everybody.
Sure.
16 to Florida State, which might be their low score for the year. UConn, Charleston Southern, 0-10, I believe. I mean, they're at home, they're really tough defensively. And that's why I think it's going to be one of those games where I think Virginia Tech will be in it a lot, in large part because I don't think State's going to really put their foot to the pedal. And it's going to be one of these games where I can see it being 13-6 at halftime. And then you end up, like I said, 24-14,
Well, that rate 24-14 was exactly what my prediction was going to be for NC State. And would have been a bigger gulf if Devin Leary was playing, understandably. It's a shame that we didn't get to see Devin Leary be Devin Leary this year. And I think that speaks to my frustration with Tim Beck in game planning more specifically than it is Devin Leary's missed throws. Everybody knows that. He wasn't as sharp as he was last year. But at the same time, I do think he was stifled a little bit, and what made him special needed to shine through a little bit more, and that's not his fault. It's a shame he's gone. Obviously, it'd be a different story if he were playing. I think Jack keeps us in the game, not because Jack's not talented, but just because I think the game plan is going to be uber conservative. I expect us to continue to think we're Wisconsin, even though we don't have the personnel for it, and I continue. There's going to be a lot of 3 and outs on our side. So, yeah, give me something 24-14, 24-10, something along those lines. But I'm really hoping I see the Hokies at least try to pass the ball in this game.
Hey, I think both fan bases
And catch it.
And catching would be good.
They want to see a forward pass, man.
That's it.
Like, this is pay good money for these tickets, right? I mean, folks want to go and see, and I think that's the problem. Sometimes I get into a habit on our boards of trying, and it feels like I'm defending NC State, but I'm really not when I just say, look, I think they feel that's the way they can win.
Yeah.
And the goal ultimately for them is to win the game. Like, they're sitting here at 4-0 going into that Clemson game, and everybody's ticked off because it hadn't been pretty.
Yeah.
But they were 4-0, and so.
Right. So first game that Virginia Tech will travel to Carter-Finley since 2010, which leads me to my last question, James. That was the Russell Wilson era. And I just got,
Tyrod
Russell
Taylor.
Wilson.
Yep.
Yeah, Russell Wilson, Tyrod Taylor. Russell Wilson, I just have a question not about the player, but about the guy. What's your perception with his persona these days? Like, what's going on with him?
So,
was he like that when he was in school?
Look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I've been covering state a while now. Tim knows this.
Yeah.
And I got to know Russell. When I watched him play in high school, he's from Richmond, Virginia. Played at collegiate right there in Richmond.
Yeah, I'm from Richmond. He was.
Yeah, there you go. You know where collegiate school is, I'm sure.
Yep.
So, it was stud. I was shocked at, I think he was picking state over like Duke or somebody at the time. 2-star kid. If you watch him play, it was just a no-brainer, right? But he's always been that way. He's very like, I don't want to say it's one of those deals where he kind of wants to feel like he's making everybody feel happy. If that make, like it's like he feels like he has to say everything what people want to hear.
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of, and you see him now, man. It's like knowing him from how he was at NC State, and you see how the persona he tries to project when he's with Sierra. I don't know if you guys see some of that stuff. And then it's completely different from when he's doing like a commercial for Subway or whoever. It's just like it can come off just kind of like fake.
Kind of cringy.
Yeah, and I like Russ. I think State like one of the biggest mistakes I've seen NC State make in any sport since I've been covering them is running off Russell Wilson, because they ran him off. I know they did.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to return, and now you've got a guy saying he's a Badger or something, like, who's he's
a pack full of Badgers.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. So,
that was absurd. It was absurd. I understand Mike Glennon and what happened there and why, as a football coach, you want obviously to protect your guy that's been waiting in the wings, but at the same time, collegiate players like Russell, they don't come around often. What State could have done with Russell in that last year, you saw it winning the Big Ten with the Badgers there, after. So that was a tough pill to swallow for sure.
Mike is like Mike Glennon. We had him on our podcast yesterday. He's he's a good friend. The same thing. I went and watched him play in high school.
Yep.
And I said at the time, I'm like, as much as I like Mike, at NC State, you rarely have the best player in the league, period.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you rarely have him. So when you have him, you don't run him off.
Right.
Even though Mike ends up being a pro, he played in the league. He was all ACC. Yeah. He was good.
Long time.
You don't make that decision because that gap is what you need to win a title. State hasn't won an ACC division title or title since '79. Come on. That's
right.
Crazy.
Well, look.
So inside,
just not to give you hope, but if the Hokies can win a basketball title in the ACC, NC State is going to be winning a football title at some damn point. I can tell you.
Man, I've been telling people, and I feel like I'm checking boxes for every other team, like every year, right? It's like, all right, well, Pitt won a football title this last year. Wake Forest has won a division title, and I'm sitting here trying to keep NC State fans sane. Like, I had one guy come on here and say, "Man, I don't think we're going to win a title before I die." And the look on his face, you could tell he meant it.
Yeah. Oh, look. That's my dad.
I'm an Orioles fan. I'm a Virginia Tech football fan. I totally can relate to those feelings. So
my dad's been an NC State football fan, since the 60s. The Bucky twins.
Mm-hmm.
He always harps about the Bucky twins, and how about that was the last time NC State was relevant in football, from a championship perspective. I think the Rivers years jaded him, because there was such high expectation. Chuck Amato had so much hype around that program, from the glasses to the shoes. Top 15 rankings, the onside kick return at Clemson from Terrence Holt. It felt like State was there, and it got pulled from them. And it seems like every time State feels close, it gets pulled from them. So I can see why it becomes extremely hard to keep the faith.
Look at this year.
Yeah, same
You
thing.
know,
What
I mean,
happened?
a lot of people were picking State to win the Atlantic this year, and you're sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem for State this year going into the year, I told folks on our board, I'm like, if Clemson's back, it's going to be hard because you got to go there and win.
Yeah.
And like, if you can't win that one game, Clemson, now you need Clemson to lose twice.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening. I mean, you're
No.
losing the division at 8-0, 7-1 either way. And so it was just tough. And last year was a year for the Atlantic. And Wake, it's crazy, man. Wake won the Atlantic division, losing to UNC and Clemson.
Yep.
I mean, because they played UNC out of conference, and I'm like, NC State would never. NC State beat both of those teams.
That will never happen.
Yeah,
that will never happen. NC State.
No,
NC State doesn't
never
have that ability to have the stars line up in that manner. Now, in the opposite direction, they could have the division snatched from them in a similar situation like that. I could see that. I mean, look at Tom O'Brien. You're a Maryland away from getting to the ACC title game. And shoot, I can't even remember what happened in that game. I feel like Torrey Smith must have went off or something in my head.
5 touchdowns. I mean, State was up 14-0 in that game in the first quarter. Ridiculous.
And that was a Russell.
Ridiculous. Like he's laughing because I mean, just that's how
it always happens.
That game. Yeah, I was at that game, covering that game, and I mean, State's up 14-0. You win that game, and they were VT was waiting on them.
Yeah.
State, lost that game at home in Carter-Finley, and they would have had a rematch for the title that year. And everybody considers State and Virginia Tech the two best teams that year.
Sure.
And you lose that game 14.
Happens all the time. Woodrow Dantzler still running in Carter-Finley.
Right.
There's always some guy that just has a career game against the pack when something's on the line.
Tomorrow is going to be Grant Wells.
One can only hope. Yeah. Anyway, James, look, man, we really appreciate your time as always. It's great to have you on here.
So Inside Pack Sports, give us a little idea of what that is and where we can find you at.
Yeah, we're online, InsidePackSports.com. Obviously, all the social media. If you look up Inside Pack Sports, Instagram, Twitter, on all those, we cover everything: football, basketball, recruiting, women's basketball. I mean, Virginia Tech really good in women's basketball this year, guys. I mean, they're
number 13.
Yeah, there you go. We do a lot with women's basketball, baseball. We actually are running an NIL program. We call it Elite Plus, where our members contribute to an NIL fund that we use to do sponsorships with the players for the website. So that's something kind of different that a lot of our competition aren't doing. We're really big on that. And I mean, we're looking to always improve everything, but we've been around now, I think 6 years, growing, doing well.
Yeah. And awesome. Before that, how long were you with Pack Pride?
Yeah, I started Pack Pride, I think in 2003.
Yeah.
And so I was with them from 2003 to 2016. Yeah, so I've been doing this a long time. I mean, I'm getting old, man.
James is Wolfpack Sports, man. When it comes to message boards, coverage of the team, recruiting stories, you got it all. We just appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, come on here and chat with us. And anytime you need us on your pod, whatever it may be, we can talk Virginia Tech. We can talk the ACC.
Let's do a basketball. I don't want to talk about that. What was that 48-27 game? I mean, I'm kind of.
Oh yeah. Wow. I mean, I think about that game all the time.
Team's happy, right? Like you guys scored 48, I think it was. It wasn't even like that was good.
Right.
And we really do need to have a basketball discussion because I've got some thoughts on Keats that may fly in the face of what most folks think about him.
Yeah.
And his assistants that he's hired, I think he's made some really good calls this offseason. Obviously, I could talk about Mike Young till I'm blue in the face. So, man, let's pencil it in. Let's do it sometime, obviously, early November and, get it in before tip-off of the season.
Yeah, hit me up.
We will.
Thanks, James.
Appreciate it.
So, Tim, good info there from James.
Man.
I think it's interesting because on paper, if you're just looking at numbers and stats and things like that, these two teams don't feel that different. When you go on the ESPN box score preview, NC State has a 90-something% chance to win, according to ESPN's FPI. Sure. The spread is 13.5. NC State's even down their starting quarterback. Like that's what Vegas thinks about Virginia Tech football right now. So, we focused a lot on NC State there. What I wanted to talk about here a little bit with the Hokies is, this is our first bye week under Brent Pry. And so it's going to be interesting to see how he's got the team prepared differently or what we'll see as far as a difference in either the offense or the defense. I think, if you listen to a lot that comes out of the Hokies camp these days, when you're listening to Pry talk, he has been fairly pointed in post-game criticism of the offense, calling it vanilla or talking about personnel or different things like that. Once you get further removed away from the game, it doesn't appear he loves talking about the offense at all.
No.
He always flips it back to the defense. What I'm looking for is, again, like I don't expect Virginia Tech to win the game. I have no expectations of them doing so. I think they can win the game. I think they could have won not every game this year, but a lot more than they have if they do some things better. I really, really hope we see more Keyshawn King in this game.
Oh, yeah.
And, Malachi Thomas, I think, needs to be the feature back, but King is still averaging 6 yards a carry. Obviously he doesn't have that many carries because he just hasn't been used much over the last few weeks.
No.
But he's been suiting up. He's been on the field. They're just not using him all the time. If he's out there, use him. That's what he's there for.
100%.
And I think if you're the Hokies, get your best guys on the football field. Doesn't matter what position they're in, as long as it's a similar type of position. If Connor Blumrick's one of your best athletes, stick him at receiver. There's not a lot of guys making plays there. There's one guy.
No.
You got Daquan.
And we heard all that talk in the offseason, right, about Blumrick. Where's he been?
That's what I don't. That to me has been the most frustrating part with this team. And
Yes.
I understand it's a rebuild. Okay, this team has 27 seniors. That's a lot.
That's a respectable number, and
Okay.
these results are not reflective of a senior-laden team.
At all.
No.
And a lot of that's on the defensive side of the ball. They've had to patch it together more on the offense, but they've had a lot of these guys on the offense. They've been there. Outside of Grant Wells, outside of Jaden Blue, Christian Moss, a Daquan Wright, who they brought in from a recruiting standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
The offense, there's names we recognize. So the offense has wildly underperformed this year.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way to talk about it. Rebuild, no rebuild. The offense has been not great. So coming out of the bye, I really, really hope we see a much improved offensive product. Defensively, I think we'll be fine.
Well, you stole the words out of my mouth there. Improvement. I hate to harp on that, but we have not seen improvement on the offensive side of the ball, and that has become concerning to me. One of my fears when we hired Tyler Bowen was that we were going down the route of another unproven, inexperienced offensive coordinator. And I thought, no, Tyler's got some experience, some big programs. He called plays for a game or two at Penn State. He's got that experience. But what's starting to rear its ugly head right now is a game plan that doesn't change. You've got game plans during the game which don't change. Adjustments don't seem to be being made. You've got an offensive system that doesn't quite fit the personnel that we have right now. But we keep doing the same thing every game and expect different results. That is when I get real irritated. And I just want to see some creativity and some improvement. Throw winning the damn game out the window right now. I'll feel pretty darn good if we show some improvement on offense against what is a great defense.
And if the offense can improve, the likelihood of Virginia Tech winning some games goes up tremendously. Yeah. The issue has been, they'll take steps forward in some areas, and then they'll take steps back in others. And then they'll go back to those same mistakes a week later, but then they'll improve the mistakes they were making the week prior. They're growing in some areas, and then they're regressing in others week to week. It's just a different story every week. So yes, you can look at the offense and say, hey, you know what? I think they're improving a little bit. Well, they may be, but they're also, causing penalties in key situations that's either moving them out of field goal range, causing them to punt, fumbling the ball, turning the ball over. and the defense has been solid. Defense isn't forcing turnovers, you know? So we'll be interested to see what happens defensively. I think the big thing to watch defensively that I'm excited about is Mansour Delane is now the starting corner on the opposite side of Armani Chapman. Dorian Strong is obviously injured, but Mansour has been very good while on the field this year.
Yes, he has.
And a true freshman that's got to get you excited. So, you know, I think in the back end of the defense, Virginia Tech will be fine. You've got Tisdale at will linebacker now paired with Dax right there in the middle. So I think the linebacking group is a little bit stronger. And then you throw in Keonta Jenkins or whoever's starting at the other linebacker position. And then, you know, defensive line has been, you know, solid, a little bit of a struggle with the pass rush. So defensively, again, limit the explosive plays, hopefully force a turnover or two, and they will give this team a chance to win on Thursday night. I guarantee it.
Sure.
The offense has to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple. It cannot be any more clear. The offense has to do something.
Even with the grace that I am showing to a first-year offensive coordinator, because I have shown grace for 5 to 6 games now, at some point, you've got to earn your salary. And to this point, we're paying Tyler Bowen like a premier ACC offensive coordinator. And we are getting G5 result. That's an insult because James Madison right now has got an offense that would torch ours.
But there's no way to, you know, I don't even like comparing to G5 anymore because I think we'd be a middle of the road G5 right now.
No, if we're looking at it,
there's a lot of good G5 programs out there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think like offensive schemes are offensive schemes. Ours is not good right now. And I don't think it's a personnel issue. And if it is, well, Grant Wells was your transfer quarterback.
Yeah.
You brought him here. So you brought in a quarterback that can't run your scheme? Because that's what
here's what's bothering me even more, Justin. We brought in a quarterback that was fairly effective in the scheme that he was playing in. We've put him in an offensive scheme where he's ineffective.
Yeah.
You're not using the strengths of the quarterback, which is to throw more down the field. Use the center of the field more. I don't understand. I get that our wide receivers are not separating, but James made a great point, and I hope everybody heard it. NC State is also not getting separation. Very few teams get separation, right? Outside of your Alabamas, your Tennessees. And Tennessee has a lot to do with Heupel and his scheming and the vertical style passing offense he runs. Just because you're not getting separation doesn't mean you can't pass the ball, right? Sometimes you just got to do it. And you can't be scared of your own shadow. And what worries me a little bit, and this is not criticism of Brent Pry, I still think Brent is the guy, right? I'm not, but what one thing he said that set off alarm bells in my head when he said it was, I'm a defensive coordinator. I know what a good offense looks like. No, you don't. You do not. And I hope this is not a case where Brent Pry is limiting Tyler Bowen in any way, because anytime a defensive coordinator says that, it never works. I've never seen a defensive coordinator that truly knows a good offense.
Yeah, well, I think, too, in his defense, he's also called this offense vanilla.
True,
like
which
publicly,
it is. Which it is.
You know, he would have to know, since he's the one calling the plays against the offense in practice every day, that this offense is not difficult to prepare for. What does this offense do that would be difficult to prepare for?
Nothing.
Like, who scares you on the offense? Malachi Thomas, maybe? He's only been there for 2 games, but he's one guy that you can go up against a poor run-blocking offensive line. So, you know, I think in this game, NC State is going to shut down the run, if I could guess, because I think they're going to stack the box and they're going to play man and dare Virginia Tech to throw the ball. And if Virginia Tech can have success through the air, then, you know, I think Virginia Tech maybe wins the game, because that's going to change what they can do offensively. So,
well, look, NC State's also not going to be expecting much of a change in game plan here. On offense, you can either be explosive, which we're not, Don't have the talent right now on that side of the ball. If you can't be explosive, you need to be creative. Now it's time to get creative because we can't keep doing the same crap every game.
So anything else before we wrap this up?
Sorry, I feel like I was venting a little bit there. It's been a while since I've been on the pod. I had to get some rage out.
Yeah.
No,
Well, we missed last week, so
Mansour Delane.
we didn't talk about Miami.
No. Mansour Delane, I think you made a great call on that one. That guy looks like a future stud. Daquan looks really good, but at the same time, why are we not using him more? Why are we not seeing more Keyshawn?
Well, they did use him more last game. So against Miami, they used him more than any game they've used him in this season. Of course, he had a big mistake on the opening drive, but
he did.
I'm glad, they don't pull him off the field and, don't play him again for 3 years like another coach we're familiar with. But
so much pain.
I do like Daquan. I think he's going to be a stud in this offense. Really interested to see what we do in that backfield.
Mm-hmm. And Caleb Smith, I think PFF has him graded as a top 5 receiver in the ACC right now.
Yeah.
There are options there. There are some playmakers.
Well, the problem is with Caleb Smith, how good could he be if there was just one receiver that could step up consistently, or at least once every game? It could be a revolving door, but it's just Caleb Smith, or it's like a Daquan Wright for a few plays on 15 snaps. So it's like give these defenses something challenging to try and stop. Let's see what happens with Stephen Gosnell. Sounds like he's coming back. I guess the wild cards in this offense are Jaden Blue and Christian Moss. Will they surface? And then Dwayne Lofton, man, catch the ball.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Full stop. Yeah.
How many drops have we seen from Lofton this year? Big.
It's not good.
Big drops. That has to change. So somebody's got to step up, be consistent on the opposite side of Smith.
It's frustrating because these wide receivers are not getting their numbers called very often. So when they are dropping 1 or 2 a game, it looks outrageously bad because they're not getting a chance to prove themselves at the same time. The balls to them have not been good.
Not in every case.
Not in every case. No, I agree. Definitely. It's never an every case situation in football, as you know. But by and large, been some pretty bad balls thrown by Grant Wells. And that can be hard on the wide receiver. So I don't want to castigate them too much because when you're not getting thrown the ball, I imagine it's much like a reliever coming out of the bullpen throwing cold. You got to get in a rhythm. And our offense cannot find a rhythm right now. To
me, it's about accountability. You're on scholarship as a receiver. If the ball is thrown to you, and you're wide open and it hits you straight in the numbers, you should never drop it.
Oh, I agree.
Ever.
In the perfect world, I agree. And I agree it is.
But it's just happening okay, yes, of course, you can drop the ball. But it's just every single week. Every week.
It's been brutal.
And it's just come on, guys. It's just Virginia Tech just keeps beating themselves. And that is what has been so frustrating. And listen, I'm not saying if Virginia Tech was just mistake free, they'd be 7-0 or however many games they played right now. No, that's not the case. They're not a very good football team. But when you're not a very good football team, you have to limit the mistakes. Aaron Rodgers has talked about it this year. The Packers are terrible this year. Why? They keep making mistakes. Yeah. These little tiny mistakes. Okay, you get a holding penalty on 3rd down. You take away the first down you just got. No, now you got a punt. Oh, you just dropped that pass. You dropped that screen pass where you had 15 yards wide open to run. Oh, now we have to punt. Oh, you just got a false start on a 45-yard field goal. Now it's a 50-yarder. Oh, delay a game. Now we have to punt. How many more points can this team leave on the field? I hope it's 0 because I'm tired of watching points die on the field due to penalties or poor execution. Yeah. It is insanely frustrating. And that has been my biggest just pain point of this season is I understand Virginia Tech came into the season a little in over their heads. But man, it's just been the little things this year that have just piled up each and every week. And it's painful to watch. Yeah. It really is. Like
we didn't come in this far over our heads. I mean, I think people, while the cupboard isn't exactly chock full of talent, I don't think it's, as bad as some people would have you believe. I think there's some talent on that side of the ball. We're not able to lever it. But the more irritating thing is, you're right. I mean, we're going to get called for 2 procedural penalties in warmups against NC State. That is a sign of poor coaching, is what that is. I agree there's accountability on the players, but at the end of the day, it's on you to get those guys ready to play football.
And I mean, it's all over.
A ton of penalties.
It's not just the players.
Yeah. When I see a ton of procedural penalties, I look at that coaching staff and question what we're doing. No more time. We have to get that cleaned up, because you're absolutely right. I could take being a bad football team if we weren't able to point at things and say, hey, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. If I didn't see us drop a touchdown against West Virginia or multiple passes against Miami, if I didn't see procedural penalties every single drive, I could tolerate it better. So that's what I want to see. When I see improvement, I don't just mean on the offensive side of the ball. I mean in all phases of the game. Yeah. Outside of the defense, which has been respectable, but at times defense gets worn down, and then you feel bad for them because they're in a lose-lose situation when it comes to defending on this team with this offense, because this offense does not sustain drives.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I'll be watching the game just as much as I'll be watching the coaching matchup tomorrow night, because this is probably, from the head coaching position, the best head coach they have faced this year.
Oh yeah.
And by far the best defense they've faced, in my opinion. I don't know what the statistics are or whatever, but sometimes I don't think those tell the full story. So I think, we'll see what happens there. But, Virginia Tech can come out and improve in some of those areas we've been venting about. I fully did not expect to come out of the James Henderson and be so down on myself. But, it just, I don't know, it just kind of flowed out of me. But, and listen, I mean, I'm not trying to be negative here, but it's I just get frustrated when I'm like, oh, we're in a rebuild, oh, it's system, oh, it's this. Mike Elko's 5-3 at Duke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of blows that theory out of the water.
The Kansas head coach flipped that program in a year.
Yeah.
Now, they won 2 games last year.
Yeah, they were bad. But they were real bad last year.
It's Kansas.
Sure. Yeah,
so
they had negative talent on.
There's hope for the future, but we obviously not going to make a bowl this year. But over the next 5 games or whatever we are, I really want to see some improvement on the field.
I don't give a rip about the wins.
Specifically the offense.
Show me improvement.
That's how we'll end it. Again, we're Chowder and Grits. You know where to find us. Go ahead and leave us a review. It's really not a great note to do that. But just know, like, passionate about it.
Here's the thing, Justin.
We're not saying anything that's not true. Like, that's the thing.
If we were sitting here 5-2 and we had this attitude,
yeah,
it'd be one thing. I think we're just being realistic here. I mean, I don't think anybody wants us to get on the podcast and try to put lipstick on a pig here. Commiserate with us. Leave us a 5-star review. That will help raise our spirits and the spirits of Hokie Nation. So do what you can. Smash that 5-star review button. Follow us on all the social medias, the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Nintendo, whatever you're on. We're probably on it too. And yeah,
go give Inside Pack Sports a follow.
Yes, do that. Okay. James is awesome.
Thanks for coming on. And just know, basketball season's around the corner. I think has the AP poll released for men yet?
It has. And Virginia Tech, I know we're not ranked. we may only be receiving like one vote at the moment or something like that.
Wow.
I may be getting it mixed up with the ACC rankings that we only got one vote for champion.
Okay.
Don't quote
I
me.
don't know. Yeah, I saw the men's basketball was picked to finish 7th in ACC. Women's was picked to finish 2nd
Behind State.
13 in the country. I'm not sure
I
exactly.
imagine State's got what, 3 straight ACC women's titles now. It's probably State.
Yeah.
Kenny Brooks. I'm coming at you live from Stanton, Virginia. Kenny, a product of the city one city over in Waynesboro, Virginia. Right?
Yeah.
Boo,
Virginia
Waynesboro, but
Indiana
Waynesboro's
people.
own Kenny Brooks. We're what?
1 vote. Virginia Tech received 1 vote in the AP poll.
What are you doing? What are we doing here, Jeff?
I guess we're just defending the ACC title. So I guess we'll just continue to play the underdog role as we normally do. But
we'll do it live.
Exactly. That's our show. Go Hokies. Good luck, and we'll talk about it next week.